Hey everyone, Mr. Aaron's again. Trying something a little new today. We'll see how it goes. I'm using a whiteboard instead of the paper and marker like I have been. I'm kind of worried I'm going to smudge some spots, but it'll be okay. We'll see how it goes. All right. Today we're talking about adding integers. If we remember, an integer is positive and negative whole numbers. That means from negative infinity all the way up to 0. And then from 0 to infinity, we're going to see numbers like -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, so on that way, so on that way. Remember, no decimals there with integers. All right, so first thing I want to talk about is the additive inverse. What that means, it sounds really confusing. But all that means is when you're adding opposites, the sum is 0. We talked about opposites the other day. We have 5 and -5. They are opposites. You probably know this. You're probably thinking, oh, that's common knowledge. 5 plus -5, if I have 5 and I take away 5, it's going to be 0. This is called the inverse property of addition. You don't need to memorize that big word, but that's what this is called in math terms. So if we're looking right here, if we know that this is true of any opposite, we can assume that x plus -x, the opposite of x, is going to be equal 0. Or if you want to think of it this way, -x plus x is going to equal 0. One more example right over here would be -1 plus 1. I have -1, I add 1, it's going to be 0. Probably thinking that's pretty easy, and it's supposed to be pretty easy. It's a rule that we can use for a lot of different things. I don't really like the glare I'm getting right here, but we're going to keep going. All right, next up, I would like to show you how this addition works using a little model here. So we're at the example 2 plus -5. Now these are not additive inverses because they're not opposites. They don't equal the exact same thing. This would have to be +5 in order for this to be an inverse. However, we can still add and subtract them. Right over here, I drew a little diagram of my 2, my +2, and my -5. And the way that I like to think about this is canceling out. So I have +2 and -5. I'm going to group these together because I know that using my inverse property of addition, oh, I missed one. Group those together. Inverse property of addition, if I take those +2 and then get rid of -2, that's going to be 0. Those will cancel out. That leaves us with -1, -2, -3. I know a lot of you can probably do that in your heads, but I would just like to show that using this model to make a little bit more sense. We're going to try one more here. So we've got -2 plus -2. Now you notice these are all negatives. Can they cancel out? Can we get to 0? Can we do -2 plus -2 is 0? No, we cannot. So that leaves us with -1, -2, -3, and -4. I'm going to talk about this a little bit more later, but if it's easier for you to imagine this problem as -2 minus 2, that's okay too. See, we have this plus and the minus right there. Those can work out to look just like this. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. All right, moving on to the next here. I've got this math problem. It says, on 2 plays, a football team loses 8 yards, then gains 3 yards. Right here, I have a little bit different model. I'm using a number line instead of these circles, but I'm doing the same idea. So I'm starting at 0 right here, and I know that they lose -8 yards. So we're going to go -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, all the way to -8. Those are all negatives. Now that we're at -8, we know they then gain 3 yards. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3. That puts us at -5. So we got -8 plus 3 equals -5. I know a lot of you are probably thinking this is easy math, and I understand that, but these are some basic principles that we are going to use a lot in the next few days. So I like to go over the basics and make sure everyone's got a grasp on that. All right, looking at a couple more things here. We're talking about same sign addition and subtraction. So if we have a positive and a positive, if I'm adding a positive to a positive, what that means is a +1 to a +6. It's always going to equal positive. It will never be negative something if I have two positives. Positive 1 plus positive 6 would be positive 7. This works the same with a negative. If I have a negative 1 plus a negative 6, that's going to work out to be a negative. It'll never be a positive. This is called same sign addition. Positive plus positive equals positive. Negative plus negative equals negative. And I'm sure a lot of you know this works a little bit different for multiplication. But for this, when we're adding integers, positive plus positive integer, 1 plus 6 is going to be 7. Negative plus negative is going to equal negative. Negative 1 plus negative 6 equals negative 7. All right. When we're adding different signs, we don't really have a nice little rule that's going to work for us here. The book has one, but that's not my favorite method to use, so I'm going to teach you my method. If you would like to go and look at the book, you're welcome to go online and go to where on our Google Classroom where the book is and check out this pages. Let's see. It is page 25. So if you want to check out their version, you can. I don't think it's the easiest way to do this, so I'm going to teach you my method. All right, so if we have different signs, for example, positive 7 plus negative 18, what I like to do is I like to rethink the problem. We're going to get plenty of practice at this, but I like to think 7 plus negative 18, that is the same as 7 minus 18, because I know this is a negative 18. I can think of that as a minus 18. If that's easier for you to think about, then 7 minus 18 is going to be negative 11. If you start at 7, if you could use a timeline if you want, or a number line if you'd like, or you could use mental math, whatever works best for you. But I know if I have 7 and I take away 18, that's going to give me negative 11. I got some more problems for us. I'm going to switch out my whiteboards here. Bringing in our practice problems. We need some chances to try that. All right, so I remember saying same sign. Here it is, same sign. Positive plus positive equals positive. Negative plus negative equals negative. I'm going to just write myself a little reminder of that up in this corner. P plus P equals P. N plus N equals N. We'll come back to that. All right, so this first one, are we looking at same sign or not? Well, let's figure it out. We've got a negative plus a negative. Those are same signs, so I know the answer will be negative plus negative is going to be a negative. Okay, easy enough. Then that means all I have to do is add these two numbers up. Negative 22 plus 16. I know 22 plus 16 is going to be 38. And I know that this has to be a negative. So I know it has to be negative 38. Looking at the next one. Do we have same sign? We have a negative 13, but we have a positive 60. Different signs. Let's think of a way we could rewrite this. I'm going to rewrite it as 60. And instead of using this plus negative, I'm just going to make it minus 13. 60 minus 13, there's some mental math. That's going to leave us with 47, I believe. And our last example, now this one's kind of a little different. We got a negative and a positive. So we know that this is not, we can't know for sure if this is going to be positive or negative. Here's what I want to do here. If you would like to, there's a few different ways you can do this. We could rewrite this as 35 minus 125, if that's easier for you to think about. But for me, what I'm thinking is I have negative 125 and I have positive 35. So if I'm starting at negative 125 and I'm going to add 35 to that, I'm going to start by adding that 25. I'm going to take 25 away from here, so that'll leave me with 10. And I'm going to put that on to negative 125. I know negative 125, if I add 25 to that, will bring us to negative 100. I have negative 25, added this 25, kind of use it as an inverse, canceled out those 25s, got me to a negative 100, and that leaves 10 over here. I'm going to have to add that last 10. Negative 100 plus 10 equals 90. Again, use whatever method there works best for you. I'm not going to make you stick to one. I'll actually real quickly show you an example of one different way that you could do this if that works best for you. Erase that. You're welcome to do it. If not, don't worry about this method. This is the method that the book was using that I was talking about. So their idea is to use absolute values. We talked about those yesterday. They will always be positive. They show us the distance from 0. So the way that you would write this if you're using absolute values is the absolute value of 100 negative 125 plus absolute value of 35. Actually, before I dive too deep into that, okay, yeah, so I messed this up a little bit here, my mistake. So if we're going to do that, what you have to do is you always subtract. You move this sign right here. Yeah, you know what? This isn't the method I want you to use. I think this is going to confuse more of you than anything. Scratch out those last 30 seconds I've been talking. I don't want you to use this method. I would like you to think of this as a negative plus a positive. And you know that when you have a negative and a negative, it's going to be a negative always. A positive and a positive equals positive always. So using that method that we just used, equal to 90. All right, we have our challenge here, a little bigger number. We've got negative 416 and positive 1,580. I would like to rewrite this as and I'm allowed to do that because I can move this right here and just move it to the other side. Move that minus 416 to the other side. Now we're just down to some mental math. Let's see, I'll do it right up here quick. 1580 minus 416. Carry that 1. 4, 6, 1, 1. So think about replacing those problems, moving them down around a little bit to make it a little easier math for you. All right, now remembering our order of operations. This is a big thing that I would like to make a correction on that I did wrong in the last video. I think Gladly was corrected on it before it became too big of an issue. We're talking about order of operations. Once we get down to the point where we have no multiplication and division left, we're down to adding and subtracting. In the video, I think I mentioned that you always start with addition. That is incorrect. That was my mistake. Was a little rusty. But what we're going to do is once we have just addition and subtraction left, remember we're going to lump these together. We're going to lump that multiplication, division, and adding, subtracting together. And once we get to each step of those, we move from left to right. So we have just addition and subtraction left. We're going to move from left to right. All right, so we have negative 12 plus negative 6. I know those are both negatives, so that means it has to be a negative. I'm just going to hit my quick underlines here. Negative, 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 and we got that positive 15. All right, so negative 12 plus negative 6 is going to be negative 18. When they're two negatives, I can just add them right together and then put a negative sign in front. All right, now we have 15. Negative 18 plus 15. We don't know if that's going to be negative or positive because they're not both positive and not both negative. But I can think here, if I want to, I can move the problem around. I could swap this and put it right here to make it 15 minus 18, which is going to leave us with negative 3. And then finally, we have this plus negative 2. Now we have two negatives again. We know this has to be a negative. So all we have to do is add these together. 3 plus 2 is going to be 5. They're both negative, so it's going to be negative 5 right there. And last problem I have for you today, we've got negative 250 plus 200 plus negative 100 plus 220. All right, we're starting with a negative and a positive. If I want to, we can rewrite this as 200 minus 250. Move that right there, leaving us with negative 50. And then we have minus 100. That's a negative. That's a negative. That means it has to be a negative. All I have to do is put those together. negative 150, and finally plus 220. We have a positive at the end here. I can rewrite this, move it over here to make it 200 minus 150, if that's easier for you to think about, leaving us with positive 70. So when we're working with those ones that are same sign, positive plus positive is always going to be a positive, negative plus negative is always going to be a negative. You can just add those straight across and then put the correct sign in. If we're doing those mixed ones, think about rewriting it to make it a little bit easier for yourself. All right, that was a little longer lesson than on my other ones, I know, but it was a big one. Adding integers, a lot of different methods there. Get some good practice.